Hi everybody. So today what we're going to look at is how a couple of ways that we can use go to section based on answer in Google Forms. So this is one of my favorite features in Google Forms for a couple of different reasons. And one of the biggest reasons is that it saves me from going through redundant information in a form. So if there's something that I don't need to be filling out in a form or it's something I can leave blank, then setting my form up so that it goes to specific sections based on what I want it to do saves me a lot of time. So let's start by looking at my reading form. So this is one that I use for anecdotal notes in reading. One thing that I highly recommend if you're going to do anecdotal notes on your students is type in all of your put in your class lists ahead of time so that you have that drop down menu and you can really quickly find their name and click on it. That way, you also never run into the issue of you wrote the student's name different, you used their nickname one time when you entered information, you used their full name another time, or maybe you used their first and last name. It makes filtering through all the information in your sheet later so much easier if you have that drop down menu set up. So, what I do in reading is have all my students' names in there, and then I make sure I put in that first section questions that I want to answer every time. So, in reading, I want their name. I want, is this book that they're reading to me right now? Is it an on level book? Is it below grade level? Is it above grade level? How would I rate their fluency on this? And then my next section is the focus. So I'm taking a note on the student and where they're at with their reading. I'm doing some formative assessment. So what I want to do is what am I looking for? Am I focusing on their decoding and fluency? Am I focusing on how they're doing with the narrative on more on the comprehension side of things? Am I focusing more on the comprehension on how they're doing in informational texts, or is it something to do with their grammar and language? So then what I do is after I filled out this first part is I say, okay, I noticed this student making a lot of decoding errors. So this is what I want my note to be on. So I would select decoding. Now you'll notice that over here, I had selected using my little three dots, go to section based on answer. So that means when I select decoding and go to the next section, it's going to take me to this decoding section. If I selected narrative, it's going to skip section 2 here. It's going to skip right over decoding and go straight to section 3 that I titled narratives. If I select informational, it's going to skip over all of that. It's going to go straight to informational, language and grammar. It's going to go to language and grammar. Okay? Now, the second thing I want to do to allow me to just fill out decoding and fluency and then move on is I'm going to make sure that all of these other questions aren't that they aren't required, because if they're required questions, it's not going to let me submit my form without answering them. So I make sure that none of these are required so that I'm allowed to leave them blank. I'm allowed to skip over them, leave them blank, and move on. Okay. Then I'm going to do at the end of decoding and fluency, you'll notice it still says continue to the next section. I don't actually want to do that. If I just want to make a quick note on decoding and fluency and be done, I'm going to say submit form. So underneath all of these, instead of continuing to the next section, I'm going to change it to submit form. That way, when I fill out that section, it's just going to allow me to submit the form. And I can do this quickly. The biggest thing about anecdotal notes, you don't want them taking a ton of time, but this helps me keep them organized. And then when I go into my responses and I look at this sheet, I can filter it by student and I can look at everything I've ever said about their reading for the entire year. I can print it off and give it to parents. It's a really great way to organize things, and that's why I like doing it this way. Another awesome feature of going to a section based on an answer is you can use it for feedback if you're not right there with the student. So this is a comparing fractions form that I've started creating, and students would do this in a center. So they're going to put in their name. Their first question is this fraction greater than, less than, or equal to 1/2? So here's how I set this up is I have this first question, and you'll notice greater than. That's the correct answer. If they get the correct answer, they go to section 3, meaning they skip section 2 entirely and go to the next section. If they select any of these other answers that are incorrect, they continue on to this section. In this section, I embedded a YouTube video that reviews how to model fractions to decide if they're greater than, less than, or equal to. Because if students are not answering this question correctly, I want to make sure I'm catching them right away and reviewing before they move on to the next section. So you can have a form that branches out and branches out. You can have it continue from this section to a totally other section. This can get really complicated or it can be really simple. But either way, I just really love that it allows me to really personalize a form to exactly what I need it to do without having to create a whole nother form. When I first started using forms, I would do things within the reading form, like I would have one form for decoding and fluency, and one form for narratives, and one form for informational. This allows me to essentially do that, but still have all the information in one place. So I hope that answered any questions you might have and kind of showed how it works. You all have a great day.